Ah, what a morning. Well, I've started a little bit later on the lane because there's some trucks further down this lane. Looks like they're going to cutting some trees or something. No doubt ruining a perfectly good tree. They're not down here cleaning any of this crap up. You know, doing something useful. But, you know, that's the local authority for you. Absolutely useless. Focusing on the wrong thing. Spending money on the wrong thing. But that's because they're bloody incompetent. Anyway, not having a good start to the day. So, it's very cold wind, not freezing on the ground, but real icy blast. So, we have a topic today, and that's the demise of game in the UK. Well, certainly from the standalone high street stores. They're all gone now. But we'll get into more details in the park. But yeah, that's where we're at. And that's a brief intro. And I will see you shortly. Okay, here we are in the park. We'll get going. So, this morning, just perusing X as you do, while I was having my breakfast, and saw, well, it wasn't trending, but I did see a video game news website had put a post out saying that X, not X, what am I talking about? The retail outlet Game, their standalone stores were gone. The Game itself had gone into administration, which is somewhat strange because just take my hood down so I can hear myself better. It's somewhat strange because I thought they'd gone a few years ago, but apparently not. Well, they are now. Now, from what I understand, well, let me just get my thoughts in order on it. A few years ago, Game itself was bought out by the Frasers Group here in the UK. This is a group that's pretty much fronted up by a gentleman by the name of Mike Ashley. Mike Ashley used to own a Premier League football club. If you're outside of the UK, if you're in the UK, you probably know. That Premier League football club was Newcastle United. He also runs a chain of sports stores over here called Sports Direct. Now, he wasn't an over-popular owner of Newcastle. He professed to be a fan. In actual fairness to him, I mean, Newcastle were a bit of a financial mess, and he stabilised it. But the club itself was, I mean, the fans just didn't seem to like him. But he seemed to spend a good portion of that period of time trying to sell the club. Trying to own football clubs is not a very profitable business here in the UK. Players move between football clubs unless they're a free agent, but most of the time your valuable players, your top players aren't, and they move for a ridiculous amount of money in transfer fees. Anything these days up to and over £100 million just for one player, and then you've got the wages on top of all of that. So actually trying to run a successful football club means you have to keep buying top players. Generally speaking, means you're going to have to spend a humongous amount of money, so it's not profitable. So you can understand, after he sort of stabilised the club financially, that he was looking to offload it, because he was never going to make a huge amount of money. I mean, the only way you can really is by making the club successful from where they were when you bought them and then selling them. So what you do tend to see with major investment groups, usually from, at the moment, you know, from all corners of the globe, they'll invest in football clubs as part of to boost the profile of their other business interests. The Premier League football is the most watched of its type in the world. TV rights are enormous and varied in terms of people that get the TV rights to show the live games. Globally, it's varied. You can only watch live Premier League football here in the UK if you pay a subscription to Sky Sports, and it used to be BT Sport, but I think it's TNT now. I don't pay for TNT anymore. I used to when it was BT Sport, but it just got too expensive. I do have Sky Sports. I have it for both football, the NFL, and for Formula One. Those are the three things I have that for. But with BT Sport, it was just chiefly it was just football, and my team wasn't always on there because they've been shite of late. So anyway, that's beside the point. We've gone on a bit of an ADD tour. But anyway, going back to Mike Ashley and the Fraser Group, they took over Game a few years ago when it went into administration. I think it was in and around the era of when the PlayStation Vita come out, because I'd pre-ordered it from there and it went into administration, and I thought, oh god, great, you know, my deposit, and will my chances of getting hold of one of these things diminish? But they were taken over, and they did honour the pre-orders. But what was interesting was Game weren't allowed to stock. They weren't allowed to buy stock for themselves and then sell it. They became essentially an agent for Sony, because when you bought the Vita, there was a little sticker on the box that said, this product is owned by Sony Computer Entertainment Europe until sold to the customer. In other words, Game weren't buying the stock, they were just an agent, they were just a conduit for Sony. Which, I guess it kind of worked, because basically Game couldn't afford to pay its suppliers. So it couldn't afford to buy the Vita. So Sony were quite smart in using them as an outlet for the hardware in such a way, because obviously I think the deal they struck was that, of course, Game could make the money from the software, which is pretty much how it would work anyway. Retailers don't tend to make vast sums of money from hardware sales. So, yeah. 1 second. Oops. But yeah, that was kind of the first time they ran into serious trouble. And then the next time was when they shut a lot of their stores, a lot of their high street bricks and mortar stores. Many of them went. And then, now more recently, then they moved, those stores they shut, they moved a lot of them into these Sports Direct outlets. And that was essentially pretty much the death knell for their presence on the high street. As I understand, I think there was only 3 physical stores left, and now they're gone. But what he did say was that he'd gone into administration, and that was the part that was confusing to me, because does that mean that the stores within Sports Direct are going to go as well? I mean, they're owned by the Frasers Group, but what happens is when you're part of a group of companies, you are treated as a separate business, and so you would go into administration, and that would be Fraser Group putting them into administration, not the Fraser Group themselves going into administration. And if that's the case, then I would say that the whole Game has gone into administration, unless for some reason they'd separated out those 3 high street stores and they were in some way franchised. I don't know. I mean, even if it was a franchise, then surely that would be down to the individual stores. I don't know. It seems like a very weird and wonderful way that the whole operation has been operated. But the upshot is that that's it for Game. Now, for those of you outside of the UK, especially those in America, Game was our GameStop. It's a very simple way of putting it. They were the largest high street chain for buying video games in the UK. We used to have a number of them in the past, but now that got whittled down. In fact, the biggest rival to Game is Game Station. And in fact, you speak to a lot of people here in the UK, they will tell you Game Station was better, and it was. There was one that was local to me. I had to drive quite a ways to get to Game. That was in a big out of town shopping mall. Interestingly enough, they actually had 3 stores in there. One on the upper level, one on the lower level, and one inside of Selfridges. At its peak, Game was pretty much everywhere, apart from local to me. I've already said the most local one was a company called Granger Games. I've already talked about them in a previous video. They were starting to grow. They sort of started out in the north of England, the northeast of England, and then they started to grow. And then they went under. I've already talked about that in a previous video. GameStation was Game's big rival, and I always found GameStation to be superior on price, both in terms of buying games and trading in games. Now obviously this doesn't, the next part doesn't actually cover everyone, but the staff in my local GameStation were more knowledgeable about, more enthusiastic about games than the staff that were in the game store in the big out-of-town shopping mall. Now, that always wasn't the case. I'll regale you with some stories from that game store in a little while. But Game bought out GameStation, and that was shortly before Game went into administration, which just goes to show the absolute stupidity of regulations, because there's no way a company that was in that kind of financial situation should ever have been allowed to buy one of their competitors. Never in a million years. The Monopolies Commission over here, which exists entirely to do nothing, should have put the kibosh on that straight away. Because what happened was Game bought those stores, shut them, and made all the staff redundant, thus removing competition from the high street. So, not exactly encouraging, shall we say, competitiveness or capitalism. So, yeah, should never have been allowed because Game didn't have the money to do it. So, yeah, I'd like to pat the Monopolies Commission on the back and tell them what a fantastic job you did there in allowing that one to go through, because we lost a competitor. Game shut those stores, fired the staff, obviously got hold of the stock, and Game was never cheap. They always inflated the prices. So they did that, and then they inflated the prices of the stock that they bought from GameStation, and that was it. It all went completely up the wall, and that was that. Not happy was I when that happened. Anyway, the net result of all of this was that, as I say, Game then went into administration shortly thereafter. But they got saved, they got dragged out of it. And they carried on, and I think they probably rallied for a bit, thanks in no small part to the arrival of the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, Nintendo Switch. There was a wave of new consoles, which always stimulates the market. But they didn't really plan for the future. And in fact, you could tell that they were actually starting to struggle again. When you would go into the stores and they were just packed full of junk, absolute janky junk everywhere. Funko Pops, toys, stuff that nobody was buying. But the section for video games and video game hardware was slowly becoming more and more limited. And it was interesting. You could tell. And then the next thing was they stopped doing trade-ins. Not that game was ever wonderful on trade-ins. They used to be pretty decent back in the day. But yeah, they stopped doing that. The impact of that is twofold. Of course, when they were selling pre-owned games, they make a huge markup. I mean, they might give you, in some cases, 50 pence to £1. It's like the case for the game has more value than that, but that's all you'd get. And then you would see that they were selling it on the shelf for like £5, £6, £7. If you got 10 quid for a game, they'd be selling it for 30, £40. So they were making a considerable amount of money from that. And then they stopped doing it. Which for me was damaging, because where I live, I don't have a huge amount of space. For certain games, like your annual updates, for your Formula One and your FIFA and so on and so forth, I get rid of them. There's no point keeping them. But when games stopped doing the trade-ins, I was like, oh great. Now I still was using them as much as I could. You know, hardware, I got my Xbox Series X from there, along with a few games. You know, when possible, you know, for birthdays and Christmas, I'd get game vouchers. I'd go in there, get some games. I got some controllers from there. Not their own brand, but the official. I got a cracking controller for the Xbox 360. That was the one. I can't remember what they called it. It wasn't a pro controller, but it was the one it was a silver one, and the D-pad rotated, and the middle cross section of the D-pad would pop up, which was great for games where you had to access the menu. It made the D-pad really good. I can't believe that no one else has implemented that as standard, not even Microsoft themselves. It was a brilliant design. And, you know, it was transformative for the D-pad. Made navigating menus, or if you had your weapon loadouts on there, it made it far more precise, far more accurate in the heat of battle. It was a brilliant control. I've still got it. Nothing bloody works with it, but I've still got it. My Xbox One came from there. Years ago, my family bought it for me. They all clubbed together and got one for me for my birthday. Funnily enough, I was in the middle of another long stay in hospital at that time, and it was a nice surprise to come home to that. And that was got from there. My PSP, my PlayStation Vita, I got from there. The Wii I got from Game Station. My 3DS I got from there, from Game. So down, my original Xbox, my Xbox 360, my PlayStation 3, going there for midnight launches of games when I could. Gran Turismo 3, going to the midnight launch for that. And Gran Turismo 5, the one that was on the PlayStation 3. I remember I couldn't go to the midnight launch, but I went to the launch of Halo 3. I can't remember if I've shared this on my channel. A rather funny story. They had, I went on launch day, I just couldn't make the midnight launch. I was at work. And when I was working at that time, it wasn't too far from where the game store was. And that's when I used it the most, is literally going out of where I worked. It was a 10-minute drive to the place, to the big shopping mall. And I remember going there at lunchtime to get Halo 3. And they had one of the staff in there dressed up as the Master Chief or a cosplayer, I don't know. And I'm a relatively tall guy. Master Chief is supposed to tower above your average person. And I was towering above this person, and they just started laughing in the suit. I was like, I think you and I need to swap. Honestly, this person must have been about 5 foot, 5.5 foot. I was like, yeah. It's just a little funny moments like that. You don't get that. Like the shop, there's a little funny moment in the shop. It just seemed like it was a lifetime ago. Probably is nearly now, isn't it? But it just feels like that. Everything was different. But it was great. And I got that from there. I used to get loads from there. I say when I was working up in that area, I would get an absolute stack of stuff from it. But no, it's all gone now. I remember I was one midnight launch. What was it now? I'm trying to remember the game. I'd been to the cinema and actually went from the cinema and drove to there for a midnight launch. I think it might have been for Grand Theft Auto 5. Queued up there and got that and then went home. It's just all gone. Those moments will never happen again, because the high street is going and there's no way it's coming back. Physical media is dying. It's a thing. You're just gonna have to deal with it. And these stores are going. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get physical copies of games off of Amazon. It really is. That whole part of gaming is rapidly going away. When I look at the cases now for the physical media games, they're very low effort. The artwork on the back of the box used to have really good artwork on the back of the box. Now it's just basic. They can't be bothered anymore. And, you know, game going away is symptomatic of that, unfortunately. There will be nothing left. Nothing. Now, here in the UK, there's another retailer called CEX, but they sell all sorts of different stuff. They're not exclusive to video games. They do trade-ins, but, you know, again, it's not really, I don't put this, I don't think they'll be around for very long. It's not going to be a long-term thing with them. So, yeah. It's only a matter of time, I think, before they're gone. And everyone else. And then the game companies will have us exactly where they want. We'll own nothing. We'll have nothing. And we'll pay even more money for it. Remember when we were promised with digital games that we'd pay less because there was no costs for physical media processing, the disc, the cases, the manuals, the artwork. The manuals went away first. That was the first thing that went. And that was it. It's pretty much done. Now it's low effort. People are just not smart, I don't think, to realise what's going on. The average person, they just think, oh, it's great, it's convenient. But as I've said before, when these things disappear in time, so will all of their games. I've covered this before. I'm not gonna go over that ground. But yeah, I see some people saying good riddance. It's like, well, this wasn't the store, this wasn't the company or the store that it was. You saying that is based on what you see, what it was, and it's in its twilight. And yeah, I said, look, when they stopped selling points cards there, you know, for your PlayStation Network and your Xbox and your Nintendo, you know, so you could use it to buy, you know, to pay for your subscriptions, or if you wanted to buy any DLC. That's what I used them for, you know, or indie games, or, you know, stuff like that, which didn't have a physical release. They stopped doing that, and I remember putting a message up on X saying, this is painful. This is a slow death. They did away with the reward scheme where you used to have a loyalty card. So you'd go in there, and when you bought games, you give them your card, you get some loyalty points that you could use then to offset against future purchases. They did away with that. So they were just slowly destroying this company bit by bit. And now it's gone. And I say, this might have been a couple of years ago, I think. I just said this is a slow death and just put it out of its misery. Because already they'd shut down a lot of the stores. The majority of the stores had gone at that point. I'd actually gone to that particular store, only to find it was gone. And when I was in the shopping mall, I went to they have like a map, a online map thing of where everything is, thinking that they just moved it within the store. It moved within the shopping mall a couple of times, and no, it was gone completely. And then I looked online, and yeah, again, because I'd been in hospital for a bit, I hadn't been keeping up on current events, and it was all gone. It was all gone. Well, the majority. They moved them inside the Sports Direct stores. I've been in there. I've seen one that is in a Sports Direct store a couple of towns over from me. That's the nearest one. And it's just, again, games are an afterthought. A lot of the space is taken up with tat, junk, these Funko Pop things, and they're not being sold. They're not buying them. I mean, the shelves are full of them. What they're not full of is games. And that's what you were supposed to be there for. So, like I said, I mean, it's very much a non-entity. They're kind of stuffed into the corner of this sporting goods store. Now, like I say, if they've gone into administration, then for me, they'll go as well. So, you won't even get it from there. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but a sporting goods store is not a place that I would think that you would think of going to buy video games either. So yeah, sad, really sad. But it's a sign of the times, and I don't think it's going to change. I don't think there'll be a reversal. In fact, it's just going to get worse. We've been forced into this. People were forced into it. The high street has been given no support from the government. People are living on social media. That's their social interactions now. They don't go out. It's like, oh, can't be bothered. I want to get the game. I want to download it. I want to pay the same price as what it would cost me to have the physical disc. And that's because the advantages of physical media have been systematically eroded by the console companies, console manufacturers, mandatory installations, physical media now being nothing more than keys to unlock the game. You buy a game, most if not all of it, is downloaded. And all you need the disc for is to authorize access into the game. So the advantages of physical media in the past, which was not requiring limitations on your storage and what have you, all gone. I would say probably half of my PS5 game collection is not installed because I've got no room. Some games are taking 130 gigabytes of space on the SSD. What a joke. What a joke. So game was never going to survive, and neither were any of these others. Any ones that are surviving now, they're hanging on, but it's only a matter of time. Society has become more secular. You know, the social aspect of going out, buying a game, queuing up, interacting with people, interacting with people that worked in these stores. It's gone. Now it's just faceless automatons sat behind a keyboard. Half the time you don't even know if they're real. We just don't. And it sucks. Absolutely sucks. But it's not going to get any better, like I say. Not going to get any better. So yeah, fare thee well, game. I will miss the store. I will miss it for what it was. At its prime, it was brilliant. Oh, yeah, that's what I meant to say, that the store that I was talking about, when it first opened, there was a guy in there. He was the store manager. And he was brilliant. Dead knowledgeable about games, game systems. And was always up for a decent chat about games. He was about my age, actually. So it was good to talk about the past. He was sort of in there, in and around the, when it was like the PlayStation 2, I guess. That was just coming to, like, well, still gaming on PC. Still buying the odd PC game, but get a lot of my console games from there. And yeah, he was very knowledgeable. And you've lost that now, because the stores have gone. I don't think it's healthy. I really don't. I think once we've lost this, like I say, we'll never get it back. Everything will either just go online, and well, that's where it's going anyway, and you'll struggle to get physical media online. That's already happening. I think Amazon are not carrying the stock that they used to, and that plays into the hand of scalpers, and also plays into the hand of people pushing the digital only future. Can I just say, digital movies look shit, right? They do. Digital music sounds shit. It really does. Compared to the physical media, they are so inferior it defies belief. I've watched the Star Wars movies on Disney Plus and they look shite. They look absolutely shite. Even compared to Blu-ray, let alone 4K. They're bloody awful looking. What the hell is the appeal? Somebody please tell, oh, I don't have to go out and buy a disc, or I don't have to get off my arse and swap a disc over. How sad is it? It looks shit. You're constantly paying for the privilege of having something that looks like something from 25 years ago on DVD. And I have the fastest internet you can get. And it still looks like absolute hammered shit by comparison. I mean, I watch 4K Blu-rays on my PS5. It's not even a dedicated Blu-ray, a dedicated 4K player. And they still look and sound massively superior to the digital the digital version. So somebody please tell me, what the hell are you doing? Have we just become conditioned to just accept crap? I think we have. I mean, the TVs today are shite compared to what they used to be. I mean, a CRTV you could kill someone with, and they would last you forever. They would just last and last and last and last. These days, you brush one of these OLED TV panels and the frigging thing goes haywire. I don't know. We're paying more and we're getting shit. We're not progressing, not in the right areas. Not in the right areas. Oh, look at my flat panel TV. Oh no, a cat brushed its paw against it and the whole screen's now gone all fractured. The panel is cracked. You'd have to throw a sledgehammer at a bloody CRT for that to happen, for you to damage the screen. Utter crap. You're paying humongous amounts of money for stuff that has a shelf life of 3 or 4 years if you're lucky. It's not smart, is it? Let's be honest. It's not smart. Anyway, I think that's my rant over with. But yeah, fare thee well, game. We did know thee. We knew thee very well, especially at your best. And you were frigging great at your best. You were ruined, like everything else, by idiotic decision making and some good old-fashioned corporate greed, which was hilarious because, you know, who the hell profited off a company that kept going into administration? I don't know. But anyway, you were great once upon a time. You really were. But Now you pretty much, if you're not gone entirely, you pretty much have. You've certainly vanished off the high street, and you will be missed. Certainly by people who knew what you were like in your prime. Anyway, that's that. That's my send off to game. The chances of me doing a walkie talkie tomorrow remote, I have a dental appointment. Slap bang, get me gnashers cleaned and polished. Well, I cleaned them myself, but they're getting polished up. You need it. A deep clean. So that's what I'm probably not going to be out tomorrow, because the time I'm going for that is sort of slap bang in the middle when I do this walk. But I'll see. But I don't think I will be. Anyway, that's that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.